Okay, so we're going to be talking about factoring a trinomial. And we're going to first start by talking about factoring a simple trinomial. Now, a simple trinomial means that it has a leading coefficient of 1. Or you might say it doesn't have a leading coefficient. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this down, and it usually comes down to just a couple key steps, and I'm going to show you the reasoning why behind it in just a minute. So let's say we've got something like x squared minus 9x plus 20. And got a new pen, much better. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this last number. This is going to be our key number. Before it was a pound sign, it was a number sign. Or before it was a hashtag, it was a number sign or pound sign. Okay, so we're looking at this key number, and what we're going to do is we're going to list all of our factor pairs of 20, and what we're going to then do is we're going to choose the one that adds up to be a -9. Since this is, and right now, just to let you know, since this is going to add up to be a negative number, I have to look at the signs of this. This 20 is positive, which means that my factors, if it multiplies to be a positive, that means both of my factors would have to be the same sign. That means that both of my factors would be either positive or both would be negative. Since they're going to add up later to be negative, I'm going to choose my negative ones. So if I do, and now I'm just going to list my factor pairs. So we've got our key number. We list our factor pairs. So I've got -1 and -20. We always start with 1, and then we'll just continue on down our line on the list here. -2 and -10. That doesn't add up to be 9. 3 doesn't go in, but 4 does. Oh, 4 and 5, and it's right there. Once we've found that factor pair that adds to be our middle coefficient, so we find the pair that add up to be this -9. What we're then going to do is we're then going to populate. So what's going to happen is a trinomial is always going to be the product of two binomials. Well, it will most often be the product of two trinomials, or two binomials, I'm sorry. So I've got, x, and in this case, it's going to be x minus 4 and x minus 5. So if I were to multiply x minus 4 times x minus 5, I'd end up with this entire thing. So once again, what we're doing is we're finding that key number. We're listing our factor pairs. Of that key number. We're choosing the pair that add to the middle coefficient. And then we're populating, we're filling the binomials. And I'm running myself out of space here. We're filling in those binomials. So here is the longer answer on this. Here is why. Actually, and here is, in a lot of ways, why we're doing what we're doing. And I'll show you why this works. And part of why this works is it has to do with what happens when you multiply. So if I'm multiplying any two simple binomials, say I've got, x plus 3 and x minus 8. Think about multiplication. If you're multiplying this, you're using that FOIL. So x times x is going to be x squared. X times minus 8 is minus 8x. 3 times x is going to be plus 3x. And then 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. And then we can add together my middle two terms. So I've got x squared minus 5x minus 24. But here's a pattern that I hope you've seen, but you might not have completely put it together. If you've looked at this, you might have noticed that, oh yeah, this 3 times negative 8 is always equal to this last number here. But have you noticed that the sum of these two things are equal to that middle coefficient? Because I've got leading coefficients of 1, these numbers are going to stay the same. So the product of these two things is going to be that last number, and the sum of these two things is going to be our middle number. And that will always work if I've got that leading coefficient of 1 in here. And that can make multiplying very, very fast, which is wonderful. So if I've got something like, we can use this kind of shortcut to say, oh, let's do, x plus 8 and x plus 11. Okay, well, that just using that pattern, I could say, oh, that's going to be x squared plus 19x plus 88. This middle one is just the sum of those two. This last number is the product of those two. And this is something that you might have looked at before and went, oh my gosh, this is going to take us some work. Oh, t minus 3 and t minus 9. Okay. That's going to be t squared minus 12t plus 27. The middle number is the sum of these two. The last number is the product of these two. And that's what we're looking for. So when we do our process of factoring, we're looking at this number, we're listing out we're listing out these combinations of numbers, and we're just choosing the pair that add to be this. And that's what we're doing. There's a lot of kind of very formal ways of doing it, but I like just listing out the pairs of numbers. And if you spot the pair of numbers right off the bat, go ahead and just jump to it. It's okay to skip some steps. It really, really is. Where practice helps is some things with signs. So I'm going to run through a couple more examples. So let's go back to factoring. And I'm going to factor something like, I'm going to factor y squared minus 5y plus 6. Okay, this seems like it would be pretty straightforward. Yeah, I've got a positive 6 here. That means, because this is positive, both of my signs have got to be the same, and it looks like they're both going to end up being negative. Okay, let's do that. So I'll have -1 and -6. Yeah, okay, that looked a little bit promising with a 1 and 6, but they're both the same sign. So that's not going to be it. But -2 and -3, oh, there it is. So this is just going to be y minus 2 and y minus 3. All right, let's do it again. And I'm going to do something fairly similar here, and I'll think you'll see why I say that you've got to watch your signs. The signs are the trickiest part of this, or one of the trickier parts of this. Say I've got w squared minus 5w minus 6. Oh, okay. Here, this is a -6. Because this is negative, one of my signs is positive, the other one's negative. So I could do 1 and -6, and I'd be done right there. But remember, if you had a -1 and a positive 6, that would also multiply together to be a -6, but it wouldn't add up to be the correct sign. So the sign of this number is usually going to be the sign of your largest factor. So I'll repeat that here. This sign is the sign of the largest, or of your larger factor. So since this is negative, that means my -6 rather than the 1 would be negative. But let me finish this out because this is w plus 1 and w minus 6. Alrighty.